everyone. Thank you for joining us at our July 7th Planning Board meeting, and we want to welcome all members of the public. It's nice to see faces in real life again instead of on Zoom boxes. We consider this to be a great thing. Before I start, let me ask everyone to take note of the exits around the room, and I haven't said that in a year and a half either. If I'm rusty tonight, please forgive me. And now please join us as we pledge our allegiance to the American flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first item on the agenda tonight is at 64 Fallkill Road. This is a two-lot subdivision as well as a site plan. The applicants are seeking the approval to erect two structures on a new lot. One would be a conventional single-family home, the other would be a guest house, but it will be where the applicants will live while the other is open. And Mr. Scott, welcome back. It's nice to see you in person again.
Thank you very much.
As a reminder, the board's been reviewing this and reviewing this and reviewing this, so we're all quite familiar, but this is the first time the public will have the opportunity to see the application. So I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Scott. I'll also note that because of traffic issues from yesterday's storm, our consulting engineer is not here yet, Mr. Sotero, so we will not adjourn this until he's had a chance to be here and to weigh in as well. All yours, Peter. There's a traveling mic right there.
Sure.
It should be on.
Good evening. My name is Peter Scott. I'm an engineer and architect representing the application tonight. 64 Fallkill Road is a parcel of 28.5 acres in size. It was the fourth lot of a subdivision for Paul Bligney, and before you now is a proposal to take that 28.5 acre parcel and subdivide it into two parcels, 8.75 acres in the front and 19.75 acres in the rear. The property basically has frontage on Fallkill Road, and there currently is a driveway which extends onto the property itself and services an existing house which is located on the parcel at this point in time. The intent, again, is to utilize the existing roadway and subdivide the property just past the existing home site. And then beyond that, currently is vacant land to the top of the hill, which has been sculptured and excavated over time in such a manner that there is currently a drive area which would be upgraded with our proposal. The project basically is two parts. We're talking about a subdivision at this point in time. And the subdivision, again, is the creation of these two lots. Once the subdivision is approved, the next stage of the project would be that of site plan approval. And site plan approval would constitute the review of the two dwellings proposed on top of the hillside. Frontage for the new lot is technically through a strip 25 feet wide extending down to Fallkill, but there will be granted a easement for the new lot, referred to as Lot 1B, over the existing driveway for Lot 1A, and they'll have a shared driveway for a distance of approximately 1,400 feet. Beyond that, the driveway proposed is 2,200 feet to the top of the hillside. And then we have a couple elements on the existing right now on the site. We have a pond, and we're going to propose a gravel driveway around the upper pond, referred to in this presentation. And we have a lower pond, again, which will be remaining intact. The overall principle of the design is to minimize disturbances as much as possible, and that's why we're using the common driveway. But the common driveway has some issues. The driveway was approved, and the slope of the driveway was supposed to be less than 15%. But when we surveyed the property, it became apparent that we had to regrade some of the driveway to meet the current driveway standards of the town of Hyde Park. And so the subdivision includes various elements of improvement dealing with this driveway segment. So not only did we file a plat maps for the subdivision of the land, but we also had to file drawings on how to bring the driveway that exists to the regulations of the town of Hyde Park. And in such a manner, the drawings that we submitted constituted a driveway plan with grading, erosion control plans, details, and a couple other items which were requested by the planning board during the review. To mitigate this grading and alignments of the new driveway, we're also adding a buffer of evergreens on the eastern side of the property to provide a buffer between our driveway and the lands or houses to the east. Now, again, let's remember the driveway is there at this current time. All we're going to do is we're going to bring the grade up at this one corner so that we meet 15% grade. And so it's a taper of no fill added, and then there's a maximum fill at about 700 feet onto the property, and then that grade tapers out again to the existing grade itself. We couldn't cut into the hillside. We had to fill to make the driveway work because the rest of the hillside where the driveway is located is rock. And so we felt it was most efficient to add material to make the grading of the driveway work versus cutting into the hillside. Because once we reach the grades of our property line, the driveway pretty much follows existing grade as well, again, mitigating disturbances. We had to add some treatment devices. We have a rain garden proposed at the base of the hillside, which just handles the driveway drainage. And then we have other elements in the site plan, which consist of bioretention basins at 3 different locations to control our runoff. We've completed drainage analysis where we have clearly indicated that we've mitigated the amount of runoff coming down the hillside to less than existed prior to our commencement of the work. So we've mitigated the storm events. With our treatment plan we proposed, we meet the DEC criteria for treatment, and so we've addressed those items. A couple of different agencies have also been involved with the project. The first one is the Roosevelt Fire Department. The Roosevelt Fire Department has been contacted, and because we have these water sources consisting of ponds on the properties, they've requested we put in dry hydrants. And we've received an approval from them for fire safety and access by putting in these dry hydrants into the ponds, including a pond at the entrance to the site, which we'll be installing for the project itself. And we also have turnoffs and pull-offs to mitigate the length of the driveway that we have so that we can have emergency vehicles entering up the hillside. Second agency we've been to is the Dutchess County Department of Health. Dutchess County Department of Health has approved septics for the top of the hillside to service our proposed buildings. They've also given us a ruling that indicates that because this is the 5th lot of a subdivision, it does not meet realty subdivision requirements. And so they've asked us on the plat map to add a note which indicates that we are exempt from their requirements because both of the size of the lot and the number of lots we're proposing. Nevertheless, we've also submitted full septic plans to them for review, but for the plat to be filed, they've asked to have a note included on that, which basically they'll sign off on, indicating that we're exempt from the subdivision regulations, and I have the letter with me. The last item we have on the project is the planning board has walked the site independently to review the project itself, and we were asked to put in some special trees on the site. And I forget the term, but basically they're exfoliating
bark.
Yeah, exfoliating bark trees, and they are good for propagating bats. because we're in a area of New York State where the DEC wants you to mitigate bats because they're endangered in the area itself. So we have to basically, we can't clear any trees unless we do it in the winter time between October and March, and all the rest of the time we can't cut trees down because the bats could be in them. And also we've added additional trees which would be conducive for the summer nesting of bats itself, and they're located in the upper portion of the property. One more thing that took place is we have an open land criteria, and we proposed open lands on our property, basically keeping areas on the perimeter of the property isolated from any tree clearing unless as so permitted by the zoning regulations under open space in the town of Hyde Park. And so we have an open space buffer on the north side, a very small one on the west side, and a larger buffer going on the south side, and additionally another buffer going on the east side. So we've kept about 100-foot wide buffers on our property around the perimeter, which will be for perpetuity remaining open space. All we can do in that area is plant trees and maintain trees if they die, etc. So we have a buffer along those boundaries of the site. There is no buffer proposed facing Mr. Bligny's property because there's a forest area there already. And our intent was to add this open space to open lands which surround our property, and that was felt to be the best way to accomplish that. We did a viewshed analysis of the property and looking at various components in the perimeter of the property itself. We've isolated basically our impacts visually to our development of this hillside to many different areas throughout Hyde Park, including the Hudson River. Our basic findings is that we're so isolated distance-wise from view sheds, except for fawn crest, that the azimuth angle, that is the angle you can actually see our property, would be like less than 1 degree. So if you look at a sky being 180 degrees, our impacts are less than 1 degree of impact from any view shed, rendering it pretty much unable to distinguish the significance of this from afar. And that's kind of what we did for our viewshed analysis. We also have some basic plans of what we propose on the property itself. And again, we're using earth tone materials. We're building basically a postmodern colonial home with colonial pitched roofs. And we're using a height of only 35 feet. And so that keeps our visibility to a minimum. There is visibility from Fallkill Road, but we're so far away from it, again, that you're looking up at a very steep angle to see our disturbed site, and that renders it, again, pretty much not significant from Fallkill Road. We've also expressed with the planning board that we're going to put a night sky initiative on this property. That is, our lights have to shine downward. We will have no spillage off the property with our lights, and therefore, in that manner, you will not see glaring lights from the top of this hillside once we develop it. Everything faces downward for our project, and that, again, prevents glare from emanating from the top of this hillside. I touched on a lot of things. I can answer any questions at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Up first, I need to get a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Speaking of being rusty, before we open it up to public comment, Mr. Scott, let me start with our consultants. We had memos from Ms. Franson and from Mr. Soteros. Let me start with Bonnie.
So, Pete and I shared, or he shared a draft memo with me, so I was just going to add to what he already expressed. Can you all hear me? Okay?
Not quite.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right, there we go. So, just some items to check was, my recollection is that they were going to put these exfoliating bark trees down at the base of the hill by the stream corridor to provide some benefit there, because I think that area might have been in the conservation easement, but it wasn't, clear what benefit was being provided. So we did talk about that. I think we had to follow up with the wetlands just to ensure that there's an opinion that they are not regulated by Army Corps, which I think might still be outstanding. You were going to, at some point, provide the architecture simply to make sure that it's of a color and tone that kind of fits into the landscape. You did touch upon the hydrant and the need for the multiple hydrants, especially the one at the base. And if one is provided, an easement is required, but there's a question whether, is it necessary, is it not? And the town engineer will touch upon that. So with regard to the house, what's very important is for it not to be as visible. Right now it's based on a layout that presumes that a certain amount of vegetation is going to be retained, not just within the conservation easement area that's proposed, but also kind of in and around the house. And so, we would recommend that ultimately there be notes, sort of a limits of disturbance line and map notes, so that it's clear to the applicant that in order to keep it within the landscape, that tree cutting be limited to what's shown. So to pick a reasonable limits of disturbance that, the applicant wants around their home, and then to try and preserve what remains, again, for some screening. And we talked about, related to that, before any kind of clear cutting's done, before people start to build the home, that there be some kind of stakeout that can be checked to ensure that when it's being constructed, people aren't getting into that area. And then ultimately, I think between Pete and just in general, we need to sort out, again, what sheets go with what plan set, and make sure we're all clear. What gets filed is a subdivision versus a site plan. So, thank you.
Just as a reminder, the subdivision would need to be approved first because the site plan is hinged upon that new lot. And as a reminder, the public hearing is on both applications, the site plan as well as the subdivision. Mr. Sotero, comments?
Sure. One of my comments was just that we should try to coordinate the submissions. We've been getting a lot of different submissions, and honestly, I can't keep track of them all when they come in. So I think in the future that we should get full submissions of all the drawings. It's just kind of hard to keep track of which drawings are which, and the latest. But anyway, so we kept our comments general at this point. Bonnie had touched on getting a handle on the subdivision drawings and the site plan drawings and what drawings will be included in each set. I see there are a couple drawings now, Peter, that are from the surveyor. And now, are those going to be the plat drawings that are going to be filed? One of the things that, you clarified here, tonight, and maybe you had, submitted it, but I didn't see it regarding, the health department determining that this is a permission to file, project. Okay. Did you submit that previously with your package, or maybe I missed it?
Yeah, what takes place is we're working with various agencies, and we try to get everybody's comment before tonight's meeting. We just got a letter from them dated this last Friday. And so we'll push that to you. We just received it saying they wanted that note on it.
Okay, because it was weird, because the hard copies of the surveyor's drawings that you submitted in May did not have the permission to file note, and then there was an email set that came, I think it was towards the end of last week, that all of a sudden had the permission to file note. And I wasn't sure if I was going, crazy or not,
Yeah,
but,
So the DCDOH had to review it because of the number of buildings we had, et
Yeah.
cetera. And so in that review, Mr. Hall put together what he could, and at the last minute, we got this letter.
Okay.
I tried to get it onto
all right.
the agenda for tonight.
And that's fine, and that's fine. So that's gonna go, and cut down on the number of drawings that are gonna be in the subdivision set, because if this wasn't a permission to file, then you would have to go file all the details for, the septic and all that stuff, and they're like approval. So, we can, figure out that. I'm just trying to see, the surveyor's plat. We just have to, we have to clarify, the monuments. I believe that they were, the squares shown on his map, but they weren't, labeled and, and such. And we typically, require, the monuments to be set as, a condition of, approval, just to make sure that they do get, installed. Otherwise, they get, lost.
Yeah, we usually defer to the town engineer to figure out where he wants the monuments.
Yeah, you had enough on there. That, I
We
mean,
have enough.
that's,
If we can get a review on that.
Yeah,
we'll update
yeah,
the
that's
final.
fine.
He wasn't going any further until I heard from
yeah,
you.
that's fine. Yep, yep. And, let me see, you talked about, the dry hydrant in the lower pond, that's fine. One of the things that you, had put in your, letter, was regards to the paving of the driveway, and that, that you wanted to post, a bond for that, I believe as a condition of the CO for the first house, which would be the guest house, is that, that's correct?
We'll destroy it.
Right, no, I mean, I understand. Tad, I mean, that's something, we'll have to talk about that, right.
Yeah, we want to post a bond in any manner.
I mean, I understand, like, why you want to do it, because, it will get, like, trashed once they work on the other, like, structures.
Yes.
And then, I just want to clarify, the phasing. I mean, you did a really good job in terms of everything that's on there, but I want it to be clear that, we know that the guest house is going to be built first, but in the event that nothing else, for whatever reason, that nothing else gets built after the guest house, we want to make sure that all the stormwater management, like facilities that have to be there to at least support, the guest house, are put in as part of the guest house approval. We don't, so that's why I said if we could just say for the first structure to be like built on lot, whatever that is, 1B. But we can go figure that out. I think it's just a matter of coming up with the right, like, wording, that's all. All right.
We'll work on that.
Yeah. So, as far as, the SWIP goes, we had somebody, look through it. You did a really good job, on that. We just had a few, like, comments, nothing, major. You had like a separate, like, book that was labeled, I think, Stormwater Management, Report. I was just thinking that because that is really part of, the SWIP, perhaps we could call it like Appendix like A or something like that, and then that's like referenced in the SWIP, and, it would just.
There's so much math. We usually
No, I
do
know.
it separate.
I understand, and that's fine. Other than that, we had a few, like, minor comments, as I said, on, the drainage, but, I think it's just a matter, of having a discussion on a couple things in terms of, the drawings, and then we'll be fine.
That'd be great.
So,
Thank you.
that's it, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. Do you want to make any comments? You'll have to come up to get to a microphone, sorry.
Use the travel ones.
Or you can use the travel. You can also use the one portable, thank you.
The applicant is aware, is it working?
Yep.
The applicant is aware, and the board needs to be aware that there's an existing violation on the property, and that an approval can't be authorized or granted any decision can't be made until that violation is cleared. I understand the existing owner is working to do that with an engineer and to close out an old building permit.
Thank you. Just a reminder for the board, there are certain times when we can take action if there's a notice violation, but only when the action that we take would cure the violation or make it less egregious. In this case, this won't have anything to do with the open building violation because it's on the Lot 1A property, and what we're doing wouldn't make any difference, so that's why we can't take action to improve this. Ms. Polidoro, any comments?
Just that we're still waiting on the legal documents, and I'm available to speak with the attorney to assist with the preparation of the easements and driveway maintenance agreement.
Our attorney is working on a list. Real quickly, we have a cross easement on the driveway. We have an easement for maintaining the stormwater management. We have an easement for the Roosevelt Fire Department. I think I'm missing one more, but
For the pond at the bottom with the hydrant?
yes, correct. Yes. So we now have added on a easement on the Tierney property, which we're working on as well. So
And the open space restriction.
yeah. Conservation open land one too. We have that one. So we are hoping that Mr. Boigny is closing out his building permit issues, and we will be filing them with the town attorney, all of our easements, and then whatever takes place, we'll work with it directly. There's actually 2 attorneys working with you now on this, so the 2 people are working on it at the same time. The Lot 1B buyer's attorney and Mr. Boigny's attorney. So we've got a lot of horsepower trying to solve that issue, so it's working forward.
I have one more thing after.
I'm done.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilman. Thank you. I told you we're rusty. We're forgetting
Michael, I
things
just had
without the microphone.
one more
Sure.
thing. Who is Alexander Kokinos?
Right there.
I'm not probably pronouncing it right, but.
So I can introduce
I
him
did?
to you.
Excellent, huh?
So what's happening here is,
I mean, I'm not, the only reason I'm asking,
Yes.
I should clarify that, because on the,
Sure.
on the stormwater permit, he was listed as, the owner, and I assume he's the contract vendee?
that's correct.
Okay, so I think on the MS4 form, I don't think he can be listed as the owner-operator until he formally owns the property. So I think it's gonna have to be the current owner, and then the permit may have to be,
Amendment.
transferred after that.
Very good.
Okay.
Yes, that'd be fine. We'll take care of that.
So I don't wanna grill as the, who he
Yes.
is, and-
No,
but
no.
I just assume that he's the contract.
He's a nice addition to your town.
I'm sure he is, thank you.
Vice Chair Dexter and I already welcomed Mr. Kokinos into town, his partner, when we met up there for a site walk. Before I call on the board, I want to first or just tell the audience that when Mr. Scott pointed out that there have been requests from the planning board, you probably heard the majority of our concerns initially were visibility, drainage, impacts to wetlands and natural resources, fire access. So all of these have been kind of worked out, and that's the process before the planning board is we do as much pre-work as we can because we know what sometimes the audience is going to be worried about. We'll do that so that by the time you get to talk about it, it's kind of been worked along and improved a little bit more. So that's been the process. I'm going to call first on the board members for comments, and then I'm going to call on any member of the audience. And the way that process works is if you have questions or comments, please aim them to me and the board, not to the applicant's representative. To the extent that we can answer, we'll answer first. If I can't, Mr. Scott will then answer. And if we can't get any answers at all, we'll come back and answer them later on, I promise, because we won't be closing the public hearing tonight. So let me start to my left, which is refreshing because there's actually balanced faces instead of disappearing again. There's a left again. Ms. Weiser, any additional comments?
No, I think our consultants were thoroughly covered all pertinent issues, and I have nothing to add.
Mr. Pickett?
I think there's just a lot of organization that needs to be done.
Can you speak into the mic,
I'm
please?
sorry. A lot of organization needs to be done to get the process going for the approval. The only question I have is under the wetland evaluation report, it was under the regulatory review, it was done that there was one residential dwelling.
Yes.
Is that the big house, or is that the guest house, or?
Well, I think when he evaluated it, he was
Microphone,
referencing the
please.
existing
Oops,
house.
microphone?
The
Microphone?
microphone.
No, that's okay. We're on television and so they can't hear you.
I think what, in his report, he was referring to the existing dwelling that currently exists on the 28.5 acre parcel.
Okay. So is it affected by the additional addition
No,
of the dwellings, or not?
in terms of our analysis, we've, any water that enters the ponds are being treated by bioretention structures.
Right.
We meet the DEC criteria for treatment prior to discharge into the ponds. All we're doing with the ponds is putting stabilized outlet structures on the ponds itself, because currently in a storm event, the water just meanders off across the land, causing a lot of erosion. We're taking care of that with each pond will have its own outlet structure, pipes, in compliance with the DEC dam regulations. They're considered to have, they're required to have outlets, and we're adding them.
Okay. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wazzer.
Yes, thank you. I believe the consultants also covered my questions and concerns, but I would like to just add emphasis to the issues surrounding clear cutting of trees and protecting the perimeter, and the comments relating to
Correct.
to those issues.
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
Vice Chair Dexter?
It was a pleasure to go up and see the site. It is beautiful, and I do appreciate all of the technical details that are going to have to be taken care of, but most of my concerns have been addressed or have been addressed. So anyway.
Thank you.
Mr. Oliver?
I have nothing new to add. My colleagues have summed it up quite well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. DiNapoli?
For a year and a half, we've been saying, please unmute yourself, and now we have to get used to saying, speak into the mic.
Yes.
Like my previous colleagues, I agree with basically everything that the consultants have said. I am very appreciative of the type of lighting, that it's all downward lighting. Light pollution is a big issue, particularly with a home so high up. We don't want to do anything to interfere with the beauty of the night sky. And at this moment, that's all I have to say. But
Thank you.
And actually, I don't have any additional comments either. As I said, we've been reviewing this often enough that most of our concerns have been allayed. I had two different people who signed up to potentially speak about this. One, I hope, is Charlotte Kopp. Would you like to speak, Ms. Kopp?
Yes.
Just, no, please come up and speak into the microphone. Sorry. Thank you.
My concern is that this land,
Excuse me, can you please pick up the mic? Thank you.
Thank you.
you guys, I could hardly hear you, all right? My concern is that I have property right below this cap, which is where this property is. And already the water flow has changed. Used to run all the way down to a pond at the base of Partridge Hill Road, or the top, and then down to the federal wetlands. I now have a swamp area that I never had. And I have 20 some odd acres, and I am concerned that this guest house is pretty close to what you call this border, open space. I don't want to look up from my house in any way, shape, or form and see anything but Mother Nature. And I am concerned about that. We have gone through great lengths to protect the area, and I'm even here with neighbors that don't border on the property that have similar concerns. We don't want to look up and see anything, and we don't want to hear anything, and we definitely want darkness. We don't want to have the night sky interfered with. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to guess, I'm looking at Mr. Sotero. Her address is 90 Partridge Hill Road,
90? Okay.
which is directly below here. if you can see it's this way. So I'm going to guess that some of the water changes that you experienced were done by the current owner with his clear cutting up above, because that would change the nature of the water. But the board cannot approve any kind of plan that sends water now off onto, outflows onto somebody else's property. So that's the purpose of, I think Mr. Scott may have mentioned it to you, but all the stormwater basins, all the bioretention basins, they're all meant to now keep water on the property itself, so we would reduce what you call the swamp having to come back. In other words, we didn't review all the clear cutting that was up there, or we would have made it that known that we had to have stormwater issues. So that's the reason why the SWIP stands for Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, and that's required for all projects of this size. And what that does is essentially, again, keep the water on site. So when you remove trees, it doesn't just sheet flow over and go onto your property. But those are great concerns, thank you. And the next person, I believe the first name is Jordan, and I can't quite read the writing. You can just state your name, and you live at 91 Partridge Hill Road. Thank you.
Hi. How you doing? My name's Jordan.
Can you pronounce your last name for us?
It's Roshwalb.
Thank you.
It's okay. It's not important. No, my concerns have been addressed. I'm new to the community, so I just wanted to introduce myself.
Welcome.
And, thank you very much. And you know, I guess just adding to what Charlotte was saying is, you know, I know she's been through a lot in the past couple of years, and we're her new neighbors, so really, like, I'm here as moral support, but also in the understanding that the eastern border of the plan is going to have the same, you know, boundary reservations as everything else, you know, and I think that that's just the major thing.
So all the setbacks have been preserved, or all the setbacks are correct in terms of side yard, front yard, and rear yard. But in addition, the applicant has proposed devoting an open space conservation easement so that nothing can ever be developed past the guest house. All that will be permanently conserved. The town holds the easement. And I think, as Mr. Scott said, all that it can be used for is what's called passive recreation, so walking in through it. Excuse me, they can only remove diseased trees and invasives, that's about it. Thank you. But otherwise, your views should stay protected. When you look up,
It's very dry area.
I've already drunk a lot here anyway, sorry.
People speechless all the time. I have that effect.
When you look up, you shouldn't be seeing anything. In addition, we can't prevent, our code does not require screening between residential uses. So if someone puts up a house, I can't say that you're not going to see it because there's nothing in the code that would prevent that. What we do, though, in these cases is ask for the use of darker or natural materials such as browns, things that will blend into the environment. During leaf off, you still shouldn't really see anything because, as Mr. Scott, there he is, sorry. Mr. Scott noted, I'm used to seeing you on his Zooms where I can find them. Mr. Scott noted, we did a visual impact analysis from various viewpoints, and literally it's because of the height and the angle and the topography of rolling around that will prevent most views. The most you're going to see it from is actually from Fallkill, right in front where you're looking down. If you're driving, you're gonna have to do this pretty long before you notice, because it's gonna look small to you. Now, the residences on Fallkill, some of the homes will actually see it during leaf off, but that's about it. And I'm not even sure it's gonna be seen that much because he's tucked it away into a little knob. There's trees around it, and I think that they're going to remove some of the smaller trees that are in it, but otherwise they're going to keep most of them. Part of the reason for that is it's not so much visibility as when you're on the top of a mountain, if you cut down everything, it's going to be really cold during the winter with the wind sweeping up. So we're keeping that as a windbreak. In addition, the best views from the property, after Ann and I saw them, are really from where the pool house is going to be, the pool and the pool house. That's your sweet spot because it's already cleared. You have the most magnificent views there, and that's not going to be used in any way during the winter unless they can figure out that James Bond sort of way of cutting off, somehow closing off one portion of the pool and using it to keep it warm, which that's what they're aiming for right now. But even then, that would be blocked. You wouldn't be subject to all the wind. So that's why the best views are only going to be experienced by leaving the house and walking around. So.
That's cool. It sounds great. I hope you invite me to the housewarming.
And by the
Thanks for
way,
your time.
we meant that we're always happy to have new residents join us in Hyde Park.
Definitely. I'm really happy to be here. You know, obviously, Hudson Valley is blowing up, but I've been coming up here for the past 10 years, and I'm really happy to to be a part of a community, so it's nice.
We love it too. I've only lived here 28 years, and in the 28 years I've been here, I've seen it explode as well, a lot, but more recently than ever. Thank you.
There are a lot of committees you can join.
Would anyone else like to speak about this application from the public? You're welcome to. Okay. Then I guess the question is when do we adjourn this public hearing to? Is August 4th enough time for you two, or Mr. Bellini, do we think, to handle his?
Yeah,
Back up, sorry, back up, microphone. The rust is wearing off, we're relearning.
I'm trying to get to the screen. We basically have in contact with his attorney, and they said it's pretty straightforward to address. So we could get it done even earlier, because that's a month away. Could we do it 2 weeks from now, possibly? Or?
Well,
We're still,
we still need to, we haven't heard back from all the agencies we referred it to.
right.
Just the
Okay.
fire department so far, so
Yep.
I think August 4th seems the most logical. Plus, we need to, one of the things that Mr. Sotero was alluding to is lately, because everyone's in a rush, we keep getting partial submissions.
Right.
And for someone like me who spends an inordinate amount of time on this and just this town, I can handle that, so can my colleagues. But our consultants don't just represent this town or work for this town, they work for many towns, many other private applicants as well, and so it's hard to keep track of everything when we're getting partials. That's what I think Pete meant. So they need to go through and take a look at your most recent and then figure out, as Pete noted in his comment memo, which you'll need to respond to, there are sheets that are right now in site plan that seem like they need to be in the plat, so we just need to sort that through. But if we adjourn this, then we can probably close the hearing on the subdivision at that night, and then we're not having to take 10 days anymore, Victoria, right? Once we close, we can take action?
Yes.
Wow.
So,
Great.
so let me make a motion to adjourn this to August 4th.
So moved?
Thank you.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And,
Chairman,
yes,
Go ahead.
Ray Stretz from Roosevelt Fire.
hi, nice to meet you finally.
You guys have been getting a lot of
There is
letters
a
from me and
face.
everything lately.
There is a
No, we like your responses, thank you.
And unfortunately, I had some technology issues and I couldn't respond as quick as I'd like to. That's why I'm here tonight. I heard you mention that you didn't have the sign off from the fire department, so I have a copy for
No, we
the-
do, we have it,
Okay.
we had it.
Because the last one was dated, 6/27 or something like that. So
Yes.
through some technology issues, I got the new update with the third dry hydrant, which meets our needs, and he's been a pleasure to work
I was
with.
going to
so.
say, the last comment was, the most recent plans don't show the dry hydrant by the lower pond, question mark. That's why he responded that way.
Okay. So I do have
I think we
another.
have that letter. It's a new one.
Okay.
Oops, you're right, we
Yeah,
don't.
the town's copy of mine.
Thank you,
saying-
thank you.
Okay, and I have one for you. Oh, is there two there? No. No, just one? Almost gave you my training schedule.
Thank you for
But
coming all
that's
the
it.
way over here to do this.
Thank
No
you.
problem. It
Very
took me
nice.
15, 20 minutes.
I'll bet.
I had to go all the way around 9G, still closed.
Because
so-
9G is still closed, so, Mr. Kokinos, this shows you the level of service your public servants are willing to go to help. I'm not joking. It's very nice to meet you, Raymond, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll see you on August 4th, and if you guys need to consult offline.
Yeah, why don't we,
please do so.
maybe next week, why don't we just get together like a Teams call or something, with Bonnie, and if if Michael wanted to join in, and we'll just, we can just, it's much easier, you're down there, Bonnie's over there.
Well, it's because,
Sounds useful.
yeah, we're still doing our agenda meetings by Zoom. It's just kind of easier that way for everyone, particularly, say, for people who have to travel. It's a lot faster to
We'll
go
figure it
upstairs
out.
or downstairs than it is to drive 45 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The next item on the agenda is a project known as GLEASON Family Properties. This is still in workshop, although we're going to start the referral process tonight. For long-timers, these are two old farm buildings located at 517 Salt Point Turnpike. The applicant is seeking site plan approval to refurbish and renovate. One building would be used for a generic office space. The other building would be used for storage. The applicants and the representative, Mr. Andrews, have been very responsive to the planning board. I'm trying to talk louder. Can you guys really hear me out there, or no? It's the mic. Nope, I just need to talk really close into it. Sorry. Okay, there we go. So the applicants have been very responsive to planning board comments, as well as comments from Ms. Moss. We're prepared, as I said, to take action tonight and start referring it. We had a new submission, and I will turn that over to Mr. Andrews. Welcome. Good to see you in person.
Nice to see you, and I apologize if I'm rusty. This has been a long time coming. We had a very productive meeting the last time we were in front of the board. It was back on April 7th. We received comments from Ms. Franson and Mr. Sotero. We made a resubmittal. We thought we had done a fairly good job of addressing all their issues. I note they still have a few items open, but none of them are insurmountable. I think there are a couple that require discussion. One would be the parking issues, whether you can see your way clear to a reduction in parking, which my client would not be adverse to. And the other is the issue of landscaping. Landscaping this site, my client is kind of firm. They'd like to maintain the appearance, and not sure trees would add that much, but it's a topic for discussion. And I must thank the chairman for weighing in and breaking a logjam with my friends at DOT.
Our friends.
I've had several attempts to solicit information from them, and it was only until your good graces that he deemed it appropriate to respond. So now that that's happened, we'll try to get this train moving a little better. We did make a submission to them over 3 weeks ago, heard nothing. They didn't even tell us to start the application process. So, but we are prepared to do that. And as I said, we've got the comments from these folks. I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary. But just to refresh the board, this is 517 Salt Point Turnpike. For those of you who are old timers like me, it used to be known as the Rimpf Feed Store. And again, if you're an old timer like me, some of us probably bought our Christmas trees there. The desire of my client is to maintain those two buildings. As you face the site, there is a larger building on the left. It used to be the storage barn. It has light, it has power, but it has no heat, no water, no septic, no anything. It's his intent, or my client's intent, to maintain it in that same manner, to use it as storage. Storage for what exactly has not yet been determined. The other smaller building at various times was an office. It was also a small retail store associated with the feed operation. It's where you paid for your Christmas trees. It has heat, it has light, doesn't have a septic that we can tell, and doesn't have water that we can determine. Our proposal is to convert that to an office, a general use office, add a bathroom, toilet and sink, add a water supply, and basically that will complete the site development. We're proposing a new entry off Salt Point Turnpike. We've moved it to kind of the extreme north end because the center of the site didn't have the necessary lines of sight. In this particular location, what we're able to do, and we have a letter of authorization from our neighbor to speak for him, is shave back the hill, which gives us a pretty good line of sight almost all the way down to Cream Street and beyond. So we're pretty confident that that's will be an improved intersection. We have the parking to the rear. We believe we complied with the code, but as most codes go, it's probably overparked for this particular use. And my client would love to reduce parking, which is fine. There was a couple concerns. The existing barn, for instance, has a door on the front. And that door is kind of elevated. It's about pickup truck height. My client would like to retain that. Some of the concerns were it looked like a parking space, looked like it was too much room. We kind of shrunk it to the bare minimum, and we kind of reduced the access so people would not be inclined to park there. It's just someplace you can pull in, load your truck from the barn, and go. We are proposing 2 additional overhead doors that would enter at grade at the rear or the side away from the street. makes it a little more accessible. The reason for 2 is there's a center post, a series of center posts which run down that old barn. One door in the middle kind of compromises it, so we're proposing 2 doors. Since the last time we were there, the doors were originally indicated as overhead. They are not, in fact, overhead. They actually open up, and on the inside, there's a sliding barn-type door. My client proposes to do the same thing, so the doors at the back will not be overhead. They will be hinged to match the front. He proposes to match the front door exactly in terms of style, configuration, and color. And I know there's a lot of concerns about architecture. I am not an architect. I push dirt for a living. And my client has some fairly specific desires, and their basic desire is to restore these buildings in kind, to patch and repair the siding, to patch and repair or replace as necessary the roof, to improve the structural supports underneath, and perhaps add a foundation where it's appropriate. But other than that, these buildings will look like they used to when it was the old Rinf feed store. I know people are looking for detail. There's nothing thrilling about replacing clapboard siding, same color, texture, shape, replacing the windows. He's not even looking at replacing the windows. He's looking at reusing what's there, and most of those windows appear to be salvageable. Thankfully, through the years, vandals have not reduced the glass to shards, but a lot of the still glass is still usable. So, in essence, what we're looking to do is restore this site. The other issue was raised last time about access to our neighbor to the south or east. In clearing this, not clearing the site, removing some of the underbrush and debris, there's a fence already existing. What my client proposes to do is extend that fence all the way to the road. It's a 4-foot high, basically board and almost like a split rail design. And then he proposes to turn that fence and continue it all the way along the frontage of the road right-of-way, but at a lower height, to kind of give it that kind of country look. So it would be 4 foot along the side yard, and then as you spin the front, it would be 3 foot all the way along the frontage of the property, in an effort to dress it up. And other than that, we have had the Board of Health out there. They've done their deep tests. We do not require fill. We've started the perk test process, and the lovely weather we've been having has not been conducive to finishing that, so we will complete that. But it looks like the system size we have on there is going to be right on target. I know there's a lot of concerns about accessing the hill for the force main. We actually got a machine up the hill, kind of snaking between the trees using a Mini. The trees are not as extensive as it looks on an aerial photograph. Most of them are small saplings, and in fact, if you get up there in the area of the septic system, most of them are non-existent to begin with. So we will make some adjustments on that and put some notations on there to minimize clearing. But I think the beauty of a force main is you can kind of snake it where you need to be without removing too many trees. So again, Matt, that's my client's intent, and we believe that can be accommodated. And other than that, I think we've covered what you need, sir.
Mr. Andrews, that was very thorough. I think I used to be told to stand back from the mic, and now I need to get very close. And it was a pleasure to weigh in with DOT and see him respond within 30 minutes.
Yes.
Sometimes that's what it takes, is the chair to weigh in instead of the lowly consultants who are actually paid to do this.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Let me start with Ms. Franson, comments?
Sure. So you did touch upon some of our comments, and essentially I think planning board needs to determine the extent to which you want the landscaping to remain as is, and I think we need a little more, again, definition as to what's being removed. You know, the representation is that there's a lot of saplings, et cetera. You know, the concern is mostly that it's going to be essentially cleared. And I think there was some narrative about keeping trees and the tree stumps, which, you know, then I think you don't have to consider that as part of the SWIP.
That's correct.
But again, I think it's really defining what is going to be removed. Many of our comments just confirm that prior comments were addressed. We did talk about the architecture a bit. I I don't know the extent to which the details on the sheet actually talk about materials, so maybe a little bit more detail to make sure that, in fact, it is consistent with what's there and that you're really just repairing and salvaging. I think we also wanted to have a discussion, the planning board, with regard to the lighting. The lighting that is proposed is a motion detector light, and I think the one behind the barn, it's not going to be visible. You know, I can understand that one. I think the one that's in question is it sufficient what's proposed to get from the parking area to the office? Because if you don't know what the tenant is or who the tenant is for, you know, will they possibly have operations in the winter past 5 to 9? And is a motion detector that kind of comes on, off sufficient? So I think that's a question for the board. So those are the primary comments, and I think otherwise you have our various other, you know,
Okay.
details. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sotero, comments?
Very light little, you know, the drainage is going to be handled by the Department of Transportation, because it's basically sheet flow to the highway, and John answered the question in regards to the clearing around, you know, the sewage disposal system. So, you know, our comments are limited on this.
Ms. Moss, do you want to make any comments?
Thank you. The concern that I think we're looking towards is when you're clearing the existing vegetation, even though you're leaving stumps, it sounds like the area is going to be somehow disturbed and then seeded to be maintained, possibly mowed. So you're going to have to mow around the stumps. So we just want to make sure where that edge will occur.
Thank you. And Ms. Polidoro?
Under the new seeker regulations, reuse of an existing commercial structure is a type 2 action under seeker, as long as it's under certain thresholds. But the project is located on a state highway and within 500 feet of a county highway, so it needs to be referred to county planning. We've prepared a resolution for the board to consider tonight to make that referral.
Thank you. Before I start from the, getting comments from the board, Mr. Andrews, and since the applicants, your clients are here, so the property that's to the west, of the site, behind it, is zoned residential, and there's a requirement under our code for screening between residential and non-residential uses. That's the concern that you're hearing tonight about tree removal up at the top, is there needs to be some sort of buffer there, or if you take them all down, then we're required to have you replant something that'll be a natural screen, a vegetative screen, or to put up fencing. And I don't think the fencing you're proposing wouldn't screen along the rear that you're trying to get to.
When you speak
Yep.
rear,
That's all right. That's what I'm talking about.
that's the solar farm.
Wait, then I'm sorry, the other side, it's the Baxter property that wraps, it's,
Solar farm wraps.
isn't his site, isn't the site that he has that's residential?
It's zoned residential, yes.
But is that all solar farm there that wraps around all three sides? I thought that he kept part of the property. Yeah, there's two lots. The solar farm, the solar array is not, the solar array is to the, on the other side. That's where the solar array is. Yeah, it's up the hill. That section back there, yeah, that's a separate parcel, because actually the solar farm thought they could use that too when they first contracted with him. So in other words, that's where he could theoretically put in residences, so we need to keep some sort of buffer there
Okay.
between the commercial use.
Thank you. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, thank you. Let me start to my right, Ms. DiNapoli.
Good evening, nice to see you in person.
Nice to see you.
With regards to the repairing of the buildings, does that also mean that there's not going to be any painting or staining of the external buildings?
The current buildings are red with white trim. That's a barn paint. We plan on restoring the paint. We're going to replace the barn boards and then repaint the entire structure, I believe. Matching what's there,
the colors.
red and white.
Same thing with the roof?
The
What
same-
happened to the blue?
That was a tarp. I think nature took care of it for you, ma'am, but we're going to try to restore them as much as possible. I think the original color on both the barn and that were a darker slate gray, if I'm not mistaken, before the rust hit it.
Okay.
So we're going to try to maintain that.
The lighting by the office from the parking lot really should be reconsidered from a motion sensor to something that's outside, some farm light fixture. That should be sufficient.
Mic drop.
And
Wasn't my fault. Not that rusty.
And I agree with our planner that we do need to define the removal of the trees.
Okay.
And because you want to have some type of barrier, and I also am concerned that it's going to be clear cut.
Okay.
You may say no now, but as one starts, there's always the oops. And then you know, so we have to do something to make sure that that does not happen.
We'll try to do a better definition and then perhaps consider some notes on the plan.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Oliver?
I really like the idea that you're presenting for restoring the barns that are on the site and keeping that, character that's been with that site for, as long as I can remember. I'm sure others here can remember longer than me, but I appreciate that, and just because you.
Yes, you being the youngest, you being the youngest.
But no, I really appreciate that, and that you're trying to keep the building character the same and restoring as much as you can and utilizing all the, the windows, et cetera. So thank you for that.
Do you have any concern, either one of you, I should have do either one of you want to weigh in on additional landscaping? I'm guessing that the reason why they want less landscaping is to keep it more like a farm look.
To keep it the old traditional look, yes.
I think without, maybe just some small shrubbery along the front of the office building, very small and simple. Other than that, I think the buildings themselves will kind of be the focal point and keep that idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dexter?
I too agree that I really like the approach to this, that you don't always have to change something. It fits where it is. I love the idea that you're matching the windows and the doors, and probably it's just going to look fantastic, I can tell. That was an excellent question, though. So we would need like some kind of, not paint swatch, but it would be in this, we need a color something, right, that says.
I'm sure we can provide you with
I know
something,
you can.
even if I have to hack off a portion of the building.
Exactly.
We'll get you something.
Okay. No hacking, please. Were you asking about the landscaping between this property and the residential parcel?
No, I'm sorry. What I was asking for was Ms. Franson's comments were basically that the place could be softened up by the judicious use of some trees, maybe around the buildings and between the buildings, something along the way.
Okay, understood. I'm not a big landscaper, and but if they are going to fill in the area that was traditionally where you parked, I can see that automatically is going to soften it, because you're going to have green where there once was pavement. If you wanted to put in some light shrubs or something around, because they are going to be using it as a working barn and front and back, so I wouldn't want to put too much.
We've had some discussions about putting some seasonal gardens in spots along the fence, and then filling in with some what they traditionally call foundation plantings, evergreen shrubs with some other things around strategic corners of the buildings, just to give them kind of like a little softer view. So let us play with it, but I think we would like to discourage putting major trees in, because
Right.
the overhead wires are there, and then by the time
I'm just asking the board to weigh in, that's all.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about
No.
me.
Yep.
I just want to make sure, I don't
No,
want to waste
you
your time and come
responded,
back
I
with the
just read
wrong.
through the minutes, you responded already that if we put anything along there's a section of the code that requires trees to be put along the front.
Mhm.
And as you pointed out, because of the overhead wires, they're going to look like U's after a while, because,
And you
no
don't
offense
want
to the Great Central Hudson for giving me power back after 7 hours last night, But when they prune, they don't prune with aesthetic standards in mind. You can take a look at some of the trees around here by the overhead wires
They
here.
prune like an
so-
engineer.
Pretty much.
Diane brings up a good point about the lighting. You have to think about lighting long-term. So although that might work well for what you might be envisioning now, if you take the longer view of maybe needing to have something maybe more permanent that blends in, now's the time to do it because you are in site plan.
Yep, understood.
So,
And that's simple.
and it's simple, yes. Yeah, we're not asking for anything major, just
Yep.
something that fits in nicely. But I love this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wasser.
Thank you. I agree with some of the comments already about how much I enjoy the fact that you're trying to preserve the structures. So I'm just struggling a little bit trying to walk that line between maintaining the visual landscape without clearing the hillside. I'm not so much focused on adding trees as much as not removing the trees. So if you're going to all this trouble to maintain the structures and the look of the structures historically, I'd really like to see the site preserved absolutely as much as possible. Even if it was a tall hay grass in the back or whatever you might envision, but not removing the trees up the hillside.
Got it.
Thank you.
Those are excellent comments. I like the way you paired the preservation of the structures, the preservation of the existing landscape. Mr. Pickett?
I like what you're doing with regards to the restoration. I think it's great. Anybody coming back, a whole lot of us go down to Adams on the way back. You're sitting at that light, just looking, going, geez, I wish, and it's happening. So I like what you're doing, and I think just the landscape definition in the tune-up be much appreciated.
Thank you. So what I think you've heard from at least the first 5 is no big trees in the area, but maybe some of the pocket gardens you're talking about are low shrubbery to soften the look of everything. Ms. Weiser?
I agree that the shrubbery can soften. You know, I think that's a good idea. I really do love that I love hearing that the rear doors of the storage barn are going to match the front door. I think that's a really handsome solution. And I do agree also that the light, should have some lighting for the office building, so that when it does get dark at 4:30 in the afternoon, whoever's renting that can safely return to their cars.
Thank you. And my comments really are the same thing, that we need to have a better definition of what trees will be kept in the rear, mainly because of, again, the need for screening with the future residential uses. I agree. I think that on the main building, because your entrance is, if I'm aiming that correctly, is on the back side, that if you had something like just a single gooseneck down light, something that would be that someone could turn on to, if they're working till, in your narrative you said sometimes till 7 or maybe even till 9 o'clock if they're working, they could have a way to walk out.
We
and
might
be
end up
seen.
with some type of residential style pole light, low,
I'm just thinking of anything that can attach to the building, so you have to run electricity out, whatever is
we'll-
easiest for you.
We'll take a look at it.
And then I agree also with my colleagues that some landscaping additions really within the site would improve it, soften it up, without making it appear as though it's not an original farm. I mean, where I grew up, we had farms that looked just like farms and had nothing, and then we had sort of the prettier farms that people in the city would think, that's the farm I want to go visit. And I think you're trying to draw people here ultimately because of the uses that you're proposing. So I think that anything that will add more curb appeal that's not going to break your budget would be great. And I have to say, you're the one who hates beige buildings and likes to see red. So when he said we're going to keep it red, I thought, whoa. So, and barns are traditionally red. You can just pick out a color that matches or whatever you show and just bring it up to us so we can say yes, that's all.
I'm sure the Gleasons have a color already.
I'm sure
picked
that's
out,
what I was
so
going to say. So at any rate.
We'll make sure you get it.
We are prepared to both set a public hearing for this as well as type the action and refer it. Mr. Oliver, I believe, will introduce this resolution.
Resolution typing the action and referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, Gleason Family Properties, LLC, resolution number 2021-14, whereas, now therefore be resolved that the planning board hereby, 1, classifies the project as a type 2 action under SECRA, 2, directs its secretary to refer the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to Section 239M of the General Municipal Law. 3, directs its secretary to refer the application and a copy of this resolution to New York State Department of Transportation, Dutchess County Department of Behavioral Community Health, Roosevelt Fire District, and the Dutchess County Department of Public Works for a report and recommendation thereon to be provided within 30 days of said referral.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. And now we need a motion to set the public hearing. Would you like for us to set this for August 4th or 18th?
August 4th?
As early as possible. Okay. Making a motion to set this public hearing for August 4th.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously again. Thank you.
very much. My offer to the planning board secretary, if she needs copies, just to reach out to me and I'll get you whatever you need. Thank you.
And we'll see you. Oh, that's right. I have to sign.
We haven't had to do this in ages.
As I told you at the beginning, we're really truly rusty up here from not being able to do this by Zoom. Yeah, raising our hands.
I'm
It's,
close to doing that.
Join the crowd, believe me.
It's good to see you guys.
Thank you very much all.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Stay cool.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is key construction. This is a matter of first impression for most of the board. We had an offline meeting or a pre-application meeting with the applicants and all the consultants a few months ago to discuss this. They're basically seeking approval to create a new construction office for Key, both Key Construction and Key Interiors, as well as some storage units in the rear or to the side. And this site is the location of the old 9G Drive-In. There is no sign anymore that says 9G Drive-In. When I was early on this board, we had them remove it because it was falling apart. So you wouldn't necessarily know the location, but it is located at 1234 Route 9G. And Ms. Leibold, I will turn this over to you now. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Kelly Leibold,
Keith Schofield.
here representing the applicant, and please forgive us because we are very rusty. I echo what John had said. I just got in the routine of doing Zoom meetings, and then boom, all of a sudden.
Just as we're learning to
back.
share screens easily, we had to navigate off of them.
We had to remember boards again, and how did.
I do want to point out that there, I didn't get to even see the webinar yet, but did they mention that there's a proposal that towns could continue to do virtual meetings?
It's been pending in the legislature.
Pending and pending and
They
pending.
went home without adopting it.
I know.
So.
I know who
It does
sponsored
have
it.
some restrictions that are kind of strange.
Okay. But it's possible that in the future we can maybe try this again. We'll see.
So what we did, yes. So, sorry?
It'll be a long time in
Yeah.
the future.
So what I did is, we're so accustomed to doing PowerPoint presentations, is we just printed it for you. We thought that was the easiest thing to do, and maybe that's the new direction that everyone goes. I do have boards, which I can reference if you'd like me to, but I figured that this was easier, and this is a workshop, so I thought it was best to do it this way.
It works.
Yeah, so it's just what we would have stepped through. So I think everyone knows this site. Again, I grew
You
up
know
in.
what? Why don't you put the board up and so that the audience could
Okay.
see it?
Thank you.
I'm just thinking that might be,
Perfect.
I'm not sure if anybody's here for this anymore, but at
It's
least.
my size easel, too. It's like, that is perfect for me.
Yeah, it's
I can't find my easel either. So again, this is the former 9G Drive-In, which I spent many, many times at. The property is about 17 acres, plus or minus. There were structures there, for those of you who may have been there when it was up. There was the movie theater sign. There was actually an area that you could go and get food, the concession stand. There were bathrooms, and then all of the stanchions. So there is some impervious area still throughout the middle of the site, and we call this a redevelopment under the Stormwater project. But again, it's about 17 acres. There's an existing access, which you may not even know is there, off of 9G. That brings you way into the back, so it's tucked way in. There are wetlands that really are around the perimeter of the site. We did have them validated with Mike Nowicki, but we will go out and get DEC to validate those. The property, we're proposing to use the property, what's called commercial general in your code. So as far as the description of uses, it's called commercial general. And what we're proposing to do is to relocate the applicant's office. So he's going to be moving all of his staff and his entire office from the city of Poughkeepsie into the town of Hyde Park. So it's a new company that will come to Hyde Park.
Woohoo.
Yep. So he has a construction company, so it'll be office and some storage for equipment and for materials. And then in addition, the back of the site would be utilized for warehousing, and then also a small area for self-storage. So that's the sort of traditional self-storage that you see, the Reddles have with the one story and the garage and so forth. So part of it is the traditional self-storage. Part of it is what we would call industrial self-storage. And what we see is there's a trend of companies that just need storage that don't fit into those smaller little areas. So they either need stackable shelves, they have equipment and so forth. And so that's the intent of these industrial storage areas. This property is located in the East Park Business District. So we did just a cover letter of what we submitted to you. We did provide you with the applications in the EAF, and I think a fairly complete set of drawings. This, of course, is the first time that you've seen it, and we welcome the comments from the consultant. So what we're proposing on the plan is the office is around 11,000 square feet, so there's about 15 employees that will use the office. This would be a well and a septic, really isolated for the office because the other uses, the self-storage and the warehouse, are de minimis. They have no water or wastewater uses. So a small septic system and a well for the office. The office, again, is around 11,000 square feet. The self-storage area is around 12,000 square feet with a combination of the buildings. And then the warehouse, they're each around 11,000 and change square feet, so for 22,000 square feet. Those buildings are about 65 by 175, and they're 24 feet tall in the back. So we did provide you with a detailed site plan. Parking spaces, we showed 25 spaces. I know that there was a discrepancy that maybe 26 were required, but there's certainly plenty of room for that. We did not go over parking for the warehouse buildings and the self-storage buildings. I just wanted to talk to you about that. I know you have other self-storage facilities. Typically, I've seen that self-storage facilities don't require a parking space because when you pull up to the garage door, that's typically your parking space. And as we all know, not every storage unit occupant is there at the same time. So there's
That would be very, very unusual.
It would be, yes. It would be. We did provide you with these plans are in two different sheets. So you have like the site entrance because they wouldn't fit on the drawings, and then the details of the plan in the back. We provided you with grading and drainage. As I'd indicated, this is a redevelopment site under the stormwater regulations. We will provide you with a SWIP, a stormwater pollution prevention plan, that will be reviewed by the consultants and, of course, the town. We have provided what we think is sufficient drainage areas. We are proposing to try to minimize the amount of impervious area as we can, so you can see the gray areas and the non-gray areas on the plan. At the moment, we had not proposed curbs. I know that was one of the questions that had come up for these, so this would be a sheet flow into some of these storm drainage areas. We certainly can discuss that, but that's what we're proposing at this point. The site will be gated just to ensure that, like most storage and warehouse facilities, just to ensure that the people who need to go back there can go back there. We provided you with a utility plan showing the location of the septic system and the well. Obviously, both of these would need to be reviewed by the Dutchess County Department of Health. So we will begin to prepare those reports and documents, send those to Department of Health. Typically, the town doesn't provide a lengthy review of those reports, but we always send those over to Pete's office so that you have copies of them for your records and any comments that you want to make on those. We provided you with an erosion and sediment control plan. Obviously, we're sensitive to the fact that there's wetlands in the area and tried to provide as detailed of a plan, but of course these will evolve as we proceed with the project, and I think Pete, his office has had some additional comments regarding that. We did provide a landscaping plan, trying to adhere to some of the native species that are there. We, of course, welcome this board's comments on some of the plant species that we had suggested in some of the locations. Mostly they're predominantly wetland oriented because the perimeter of the property where the development ends is the wetter areas. We also provided you with a lighting plan. I know there were some comments relative to the photometric size, so we can certainly expand the font size so that you can see those, the pole detail, and the lights, of course. Everything was taken into consideration with the dark sky compliant lights. So there would be some pole lights and some building lights on each of the different buildings. We did provide you with a floor plan. Keith Schofield is here, and he can certainly go over the elevations for the property and for the different buildings. We did try to take into consideration earth tone colors, the tans and the grays. We added stone at the base of the buildings because I know that that's something that this board likes to see. I think we used, was it a hardy material?
The actual,
Microphone? Is this?
I'm sorry. Well, we did stick with the pre-engineered building material and roofing material above the stone band that we're implementing on the lower level. So, again, earth tone colors, a field stone, kind of grayish beige would be the siding color, a bronze for the roof colors, and the window treatments and storefront would be like a dark bronze anodized. The basic storage units, again, are going to follow the same pre-engineered siding, following the beige color, the darker roof color with the bronze, and that basically we would probably follow along with a matching or similar color roll-up door. The anywhere we have units that are 65 feet deep, we have an egress door for a man door to go off the rear, and we would have those in a accent color of a bronze to match, dark bronze to match the roof colors. So sticking with that as we go from the industrial size back to the residential size, we're basically following the same flavor of color schemes all the way through.
And all of these roofs are the pitched roofs, so you don't have, sorry. All of these roofs are the pitched roofs, so you don't have a flat roof on all of these structures. So I think that's really our presentation. I know that some board members, we did do, as you had indicated, Mr. Chairman, a smaller work session, and there were some board members that weren't privy to this project, so we just wanted to present this to you at this work session. And he's got the elevations, Vanna. We did get the comments from the consultants, so I'm happy to go through those if you want to. I know they're lengthy and you have other applications behind us. There are a few questions that I had just to ask you about, and certainly welcome to any comments that the board has, so we can go
Ask the
back.
questions first before I even call on the consultants.
Okay.
Go ahead.
On Pete's, I understood everything and I didn't have any questions. On Bonnie's, I was just questioning how you want to deal with the parking for the self-storage facility.
So the applicant had done a calculation for the self-storage facility as to how many parking spaces would be needed, but it's really not shown. So it's a question for the board in terms of what you think is needed. I totally understand the drive up.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't really have the conventional parking spaces like you do with the office or with employees, but it's more just how do you want to theoretically show it with dotted lines? Does it need to be shown? It's a general question.
I'll let the board weigh in on this, but since Mr. Hutchins is here with the storage unit as well, we're going to treat this probably the same way we did with him, which is that if you can just show that there's enough width with your drive aisles that someone could park there, parallel, however, then that's what's sufficient.
Okay.
Because we know from experience that people who go to these, actually from experience, I'm learning that a lot of people put storage and then forget to go to these. Just put them on their credit cards and just pay forever. Seems to be a lucrative business that way. But when they're here, sorry, when they're here, they really are there for a short amount of time, or even if they're going through something, it's still a temporary parking area. We just want to make sure that there's enough room for maybe a couple of other people at the time. The bigger question for the board is the what I'll call the industrial storage, do we need to have parking spaces there? Is that something that people would be parking at a longer time period? Or, for example, there's a landscaper, young man, who needs to store equipment. When his drivers come in that morning, they need a place to park their own cars all day because they're going to be taking the trucks they use with the cherry pickers, et cetera, out for all during the day. I mean, I've already mentioned to him this site, and he knows the owner, Mr. Giorgiani. He went to school with Sally. So I was like, this would be a perfect fit for him because he can't find a place, and he needs something like this, because landscaper, trees, all that.
It's a great
So
building.
the question would be, do we need to find parking there? Because there may be people coming in to actually pick up equipment, leaving their personal vehicles there that day. That's what struck me when you were talking about that.
Into the industrial parking, or do you walk in?
Both.
I
I
mean,
mean, there's an overhead door for,
so-
if you wanted to pull in, and then there's also this doesn't sound, a man door, a pedestrian door.
Right,
man
so,
door.
so you have like kind of different components of the site. So you have the
Correct.
self-storage, where I
Correct.
can see that's definitely the drive up, but then there's the sort of two warehouses in the
Correct.
back. And I think that was just my general, comment about having a narrative of what is attached to what. Are those going to be leased? And then if that's the case, will there be employees parking there, and do you need to show parking? It depends on whether that's attached to the office and the overall use. So I think a little bit more definition as to sort of how many tenants do you envision, because I think that also speaks to the parking.
So the intention is that the office has its own warehouse, which is immediately behind the office space, and that we've shown the parking and some of the outdoor storage for that the warehouse, the more industrial storage, would be individually leased. So perhaps what we should do is show some parking in the front of each of the units or on the side of the units and just show you what we could provide. Again, I'm not sure if each unit would be leased to someone who has the type of setting where they have staff that are coming in and leaving their cars. So we'll show you what parking we could provide, and there's some mixture of, maybe some have no parking and others
Yeah,
have, and on average, we'll provide parking.
In other
there.
words, the industrial storage, is that divided inside so that you would lease a portion of it, or is it leasing the whole thing, that kind of thing? 'Cause
Yeah, each unit, we're setting it up now because it's so hard to determine how
I
it
know
will be leased.
what the
Yeah.
needs are for everybody, because
Correct.
like, in the case of Mr. Lehan, he has, Tad would know better than me, but he has a lot of trucks. And they arrive, they depart like at 5 a.m., and they're not back when it's nice weather like this until about 9:30. Well, nice being a different term, sorry. It's horrendously hot outside and humid, but at any rate, but they're working. So obviously during the winter, they're not landscaping, they're doing more snow plowing, et cetera, so that's going to be different hours. But and he would probably need, a third, maybe even a half. I don't know. I haven't seen what his equipment looks like lately. But it's hard I know for you to figure that out, but I think that we need to figure out some way to have parking in case there would be people coming in and
Okay,
leaving their own
we'll look into that
merch.
and see if we can find maybe some planning trends or something.
Yeah, because, a warehouse, I think we're thinking sort of contractor, but it could be distribution. And so,
Absolutely. Yes, I
right,
agree.
so, employees could come in, and that speaks to whether the space is going to be conditioned. So I think it's almost as if you should plan for, I don't know, maybe more intense, and if it just turns out to be a warehouse, non-conditioned, don't have a lot of employees, it's just contractor storage, that might be different, but.
I think the latter is what we intend. We don't intend to condition the space.
Okay.
So it's really what we
That's
would
what
call
I thought,
industrial
because
storage.
you made that clear at the first meeting. These changed from the first meeting. You have the two bigger ones back there rather than
Correct.
a series of ones. But if you're not going to condition them, then that would seem to mitigate, to argue against there ever being a distribution center there,
Or
because there's no
office.
bathroom, no
Yeah,
office.
no bathrooms, no office, correct, yep.
So I think if that's a note that that you're not conditioning it, it's purely a warehouse, then what that is different than,
Correct.
it could be more intensive.
Do you have other questions for Bonnie?
Yes, I'm sorry. Septic system, parking summary. The scale, my favorite thing. Ugh.
Yes, scale.
Perhaps Tad and Bonnie and I can go through and do a
And how to
scale
calculate it,
calculation.
yeah.
Yeah, because it'll be predicated on the parking.
Yes.
So we have to identify what that is. So
Right.
we'll just kind of put a placeholder that we know that we have to address scale.
Yeah, scale in East Park Business District, for those who are interested, is 45,000 square feet. And remember, that includes the parking spaces, so they're going to have to go for a variance, obviously. But this is the time, you can keep looking through for questions, but this is the time I can interject finally that I think this is a really good use for the site. No one knows that drive-in's there. It's surrounded by a lot of rock and landscaping, and this is a really, if you're going to put anything back there, this would be what to put, to me, because it's not really visible. And I appreciate that you guys were sensitive to the board's normal requests for better architecture, but this is not even going to be seen much by regular people.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's nice that, obviously, I saw that there's an attorney's office within the building, and I think that Mr. Torgiani may be having, clients come up there, so that's going to be nice for him.
Correct.
And that they can see that he's capable of doing something great. So, but these are usually pretty utilitarian. You've done a nice job. So, and anyway, I'm sorry. Next question.
Kudos to Keith, yes.
Kudos to Keith.
And I agree, I echo that. I think the front of the front of property we intended is when you come in, it will be the client's office, so it would be nicer, and then in the back, as you go back, it would be industrial space, so I agree with you. Electric and cable aren't shown, so we can just kind of show a general path, because we don't know at this point what we're doing. And then the only last question I had was, on SHPO, I haven't traditionally referred a project back to SHPO with sort of de minimis changes. So have you done that in the past? I just didn't want to frustrate them with the fact that we already submitted it and got a no impact letter on a more intensive development. So now
Yeah.
it's less intensive.
So I think it was more because of the building changes, but didn't we, Cynthia, get some clarification on that from SHPO? Was it Key Construction? Okay. Right.
I couldn't hear. What did they want to do?
Because I think you had a different configuration, different number of buildings, so they looked at something different. I don't know that from their perspective, it's going to change much if it was already disturbed, but technically they looked at a different project.
Okay,
So
we'll
it just-
resubmit it. If
yeah.
they get frustrated, then we'll tell them that it's less intense. Okay.
Right.
And then the last was just the DEC Natural Heritage Program. The request is needed. So we did submit a request to them to give us the summary of all of the permits that were required, but you're looking for them to do a request on the current habitat and the species that
Yeah,
are on
na-
site?
right. Natural Heritage usually comes back with a more detailed list of potential species, and I understand most of the property is disturbed. It has more to do with the wetland habitat.
Okay.
Just making sure nothing else pops up.
Okay. All right.
Fish and Wildlife Service is pretty general, what comes back. I do have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Since we're talking about this, you have one of the buildings are showing, you said building overhang. What is being proposed there? So what's your thought as far as storage, et cetera?
Sure, that was more for somebody that might have a boat or a camper or something like that and wanted to pull it straight through, and it was protected from any loads from snow and everything
From the
over
elements?
the top.
Okay.
Correct.
And then kind of related to that was you sometimes have the self-storage facilities around the perimeter and locations have storage of mobile homes, other things. And I didn't know whether there was any intent to have more than simply having things stored in the self-storage units, or if it was just solely going to be within the self-storage units.
So we weren't necessarily intending on having the storage outside of the buildings, only because we had limited area there where you bump up next to the wetlands, and the edge of the pavement is essentially the edge of the buffer.
Right.
And one of the things I wanted to do was speak to the fire chief about access and circulation. So maybe we'll hold on responding that until we're able to speak to him and see what his feeling is as far as the circulation around the building.
Sure.
I think that's what we intended for that overhang, and possible equipment storage for the owner if he wanted to put any type of construction equipment and just store it underneath so it was accessible and then easily pulled out, but it wasn't enclosed. It didn't need to be enclosed. That was the intention of that. And again, kind of, this more industrial stuff tucked into the back, and then the less industrial up front.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which then lets me segue to you, Ms. Franson. Any other comments? Do you want to highlight anything from your memo that you think is especially important, or?
I think we really covered the highlights. I think, again, always a detailed narrative is always useful. A lot of them were just more detail. There's some general notes on there. I don't know if they're necessary. We talked about the building overhang. The DEC, I think, is important, just getting their verification, their validation. So I I think that we can move on. The applicant has the comments, and this is going to evolve a little bit more. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Zatara?
Like at this point, most of the engineering information is preliminary, like at this time. So, as Kelly said, they'll be providing a stormwater pollution prevention plan. We'll need some more information on, the grading and, the spot grades on the site to see how it's going to drain and that kind of stuff. So that was pretty much it. There'll be some more information coming. The one thing that I thought about sitting here was, if it's going to be some industrial like storage, possibly a landscaping like firm, we probably want to have some kind of notes on there in regards to storage of any hazardous materials. I'll look and see. I had another application or two in another town where it was kind of a similar thing, and we had some like notes and stuff.
Okay.
So, I'll dig those out and
Perfect. Okay, good.
we'll get them to you to put on there.
Okay,
But
perfect.
other than that, it's preliminary. At this point, I also do think it's a good use for the site. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
City of Poughkeepsie's loss is Hyde Park's gain. Ms. Moss, any comments?
Here.
Yeah, there we go.
It's on. It should be.
Did take a fall.
Testing.
No.
It may have had an issue when it fell,
Yes, well, we'll go
when it
back.
plunged itself off the table.
There.
Yeah, just raise that.
There you go.
The one of the concerns that I would have is snow storage, where snow storage is going to be handled. And just talking this evening, I thought I saw a note that there's to be no maintenance of equipment on site.
There might have been, I'll look and see.
So I think it's important to know if there's going to be maintenance of the equipment.
Thank you, Chad. And just for fun, let me start with my inner right, Ms. Dexter. Comments?
Excellent use for the site. We've heard some other proposals that just made the eyebrows go up.
Wait,
Sounds
that
like
was a
there's.
long time ago.
Oh, I know. Nothing pops out at me as being of major concern. Again, the scale is always fun around here. I do agree that we would kind of need to know where other parking would be. But otherwise, I don't have too many comments, just a nice architecture and good use. I did notice on your overall site plan that you say proposed buildings is 7, but I count 8.
Okay, check it. That was just to make sure someone saw that.
Testing our math skills.
Good, you guys passed. Okay.
Thank you, Ann. Mr. Oliver?
So I would agree. I think it's excellent use of the site. I'm fine with the parking being relaxed around the commercial storage buildings because, as you noted, there's very seldom everyone or many people are there at once. It may be a bit premature, but going to the proposed warehouse storage buildings in what I'll call the back of the site or the north of the site, just an idea to maybe help with the parking use issue. And I don't know if it violates any setback issues, but if you take the building to the east and the building to the west and move them both to the line of the curve there and just have a 65-foot deep bay and put the parking in the center between the two that they can kind of, utilize, utilize between themselves, move if they have to, because with that narrow drive lane in the back, if you have a door there, if it's industrial use, I don't see trailers or large trucks being able
Going in
to
there.
maneuver, so.
if the guy right there says that's okay.
It might
That
just
was our
simplify
issue
things.
was, trying to get, if we have to get the
For
fire truck
fire,
around,
ac-
so if they're,
access.
totally agree with you that that would
Yeah.
solve the issue. So hopefully we can make that change.
Or even have like a mountable curb or grass area in the back.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know,
they could go
something in the
around.
back,
Yep,
but
yep, okay,
I
agree.
think that would solve a lot of the confusion. That's my comments. Thank
That's
you.
a very good comment, as always, Chris. Ms. DiNapoli?
First off, welcome to Hyde Park. Poughkeepsie's loss is our gain. I have to admit, this is a great use for the property. The only thing that would make it better, that on one of the industrial storage units, if you can put up a screen, and we can continue with the drive-in. Think about that, a little extra money, slow season. I do have a few questions, and one of them is that, and I don't know how far away, so, are the houses around the perimeter? And could they be put on the map so we can
Sure.
see?
We
where-
can do that, absolutely. We did an aerial photo when we did this smaller, if we had Zoom, we could so easily, we could show you, which we did, but we can do that. They're actually pretty far away, and it is like Jurassic Park back there. When you go in, it is so thick. So it's heavily, heavily wooded once you get back into the perimeter of the property.
Into the weeds.
Yeah, but we'll show you where they are. It was one of the questions that came up when we had our meeting, and it's a good question, so we'll show those too.
And the hours of operation was stated 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Yes.
I know that's all encompassing, but the concern would be more for when people have to come in early, trucks backing up, the beep, beep, beep. I
Sure.
don't know in terms of noise, how close that is to the neighbors. Are they that far away that,
We'll show you, yeah. Yep, we'll show you that, so you can see it, good.
And that's it for now.
Thank you. Those were great. Ms. Wasser?
Yeah, that was a comment that I had on terms of hours of operation and why it would need to be 24/7. So some clarification on that would be, not during construction, but during operation, it showed that it was 24/7.
It's essentially the self-storage, because I didn't know how to quantify it, but they're 24, because there's a code that people can go in
I'm more
at night.
concerned with the industrial uses. And when we were talking about parking on the industrial warehouses, do you envision equipment that has to be loaded onto a flatbed in the morning and then taken out?
I don't,
That's just something to think about, because that's a different kind of parking issue.
yeah, I think that's a more intensive industrial warehouse type of thing that you would see in a larger parcel. So I don't believe that we would see this facility being stored for construction equipment outside for those tenants, that they would have to come and load something on a lowboy and bring it in and out. We see it more as a lot of times in these industrial buildings, it's more for contractors, smaller contractors that just need a place to store equipment, smaller equipment, not necessarily industrial contractors that would be in a bigger warehouse.
Okay, because that's what I was envisioning. Okay, great. And I love the use and delighted that you are coming to Hyde Park.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mr. Pickett?
I think it's a great use of the property. The only question or concern I have is on the entrance exit. You know, you're on 44, well, I don't know if it's 44,
9G.
45, you're on 9G,
speed.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if it's 45, 55 miles an hour, but everybody's doing
They
55,
are.
60. And the concern is the line of sight on the entrance and
Agreed.
exit, because you've got growth right up to the edge of the road there.
You do.
And
sure.
so if you're coming in with cars or big heavy equipment or flatbeds or whatever, that's my concern. Can you,
We can address that.
okay.
We do have to go to DOT to get
That's what
a permit.
they're
yep.
gonna-
Yeah, we
And-
brought that up too in our
Did you?
comment.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
All right.
okay. That's
So they'll require us on the permit drawings to show the line of sight. We'll certainly have to do some clearing there just to make sure that there's better sight distance.
Okay,
And
right.
whatever improvements that they have us do on that intersection, probably some channelization or curbing or something like
Right.
that.
Mine is mostly line of sight, because it did a quick
Yes.
drive-by, and
Yeah.
it's, you know, You get a wall.
Yeah, agree. I think once you clean the vegetation out too, and you can see in and out, up and down 9G, it might be a little bit easier. But I'm sure they'll ask us to do that.
Yeah, okay. But I like it, thank you.
Ms. Weiser?
So it seems like it would be a good idea to show parking at the warehouse buildings. Might be a good idea, but I agree to relax the standards of parking for the self-storage. I appreciate that you made these good-looking buildings. I think the people who work there will be very happy that you've done it, even if no one else sees it.
Thank you.
So, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, so you heard 6 very positive comments about this business coming here, and I just recognized Mr. Torgiani in the back. I didn't know that was you. You're wearing your cap.
He's incognito today.
You're incognito, both of you. Mask and a cap, I don't know anybody there.
Yes.
So my only big comment was really just that the adjacent area to the DEC wetlands is really close and through there. I'm just wanting to make sure that there's a way that somehow we don't, when Tad mentioned snow storage, my first thought was we don't want to see the snow dumped into the adjacent area for the wetlands. So we need to show a snow storage area where it can be stored during that time, or with a note saying it's going to be carted off, one of the two. But I'm just wondering what you propose to do ultimately to make sure that that's not invaded, because I don't want the DEC screaming at the town, or you know, the applicant, once they're in business. The comment that I had was just really covered, and that is that having gone by this recently, I'm going to guess that DOT will want the entrance, exit, whatever, upgraded. I don't see how they wouldn't in through there.
Understood.
And then last, I also will weigh in and say that I think we need to consider parking for the industrial storage in the rear. And I don't, just so long as, again, that you can show that there's room for cars to park and, you know, around the individual self-storage, as well as in that event that there would also be a way for a fire truck to be able to get in too. That's all we're really concerned about. And these are lower buildings, so it may be when we get to the fire department that they say, oh, we can stand on either of one side and hit all the buildings. We don't know, because I know there's different ways that the fire departments approach these processes. But otherwise, I mostly agree with my colleagues. I think it's a wonderful use for the area. I'm delighted to see the business come here. I did have a question about sign. You're going to ultimately propose signage as part of this for the front?
I think what we did is we showed a location.
You have a location.
Up there, but it was too preliminary to propose.
That's what I
an actual
figured.
sign.
I know you submitted this really to get back feedback. And so I also appreciate the fact that both Bonnie and Pete did thorough reviews. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's missing for Pete's more thorough review. But Bonnie went through a lot of details so that we could get everything up front.
Yes, we're grateful.
And then not
for
have
that.
to
Thank
go
you.
through and have things brought back later on about, well, wait, what about this? What about this? Because we're trying always to streamline the process here, if that's possible. And now that I'm here, I have to say I'm actually enjoying meeting again in real life, even though I was creaky like Tin Man at first when we got here. So you'll have a chance to respond to the memo and make any changes based on that. Mr. Schofield, this is our first time to work with you. It's a pleasure. I really did mean it when I said I'm really appreciative that the building looks as nice as it did.
Yeah.
I also love the fact that you're like, oh, we're going to keep the colors and all the self-storage. Even the overhang doors will be like, that's going to really blend in nicely for anybody who's back there. So when Mr. Torgiani's clients come, they're not going to go, ugh, over there. They're still going to get that there's a nice space there.
Did a very nice job.
I think it's a wonderful
The
job.
bigger boards came out even better than the little drawings, so next time we'll reuse those and everyone can see those.
If we can always do PowerPoints up on the screen as well, if you want to do a PowerPoint.
Okay.
I know it was a lot easier when we were on Zoom to do these things, but
Certainly for the consultants it was, yeah, but
well,
that's
even
okay.
for
We're back to the way we were.
even for us, but it's actually I've learned, having watched it now on my big screen TV at home, it blurs out because what you're seeing when you're sharing the screen is so small with the other people that the translation from the computer to the television, it's kind of blurry. I was like squinting hard, reading glasses, so it'll be better for the public to see that. And I hope when we get to the public hearing, they'll all be excited about this too. So,
thank you.
Good to see you.
Have a wonderful
We'll see you
night.
shortly.
Thank you, too.
Next item on the agenda. Oh, Kelly, before you
That was
leave.
shortly.
Sorry. That was very shortly we're seeing you. Another a different application. Hyde Park Town Center. I emailed everyone that Tad and I went out and met with Amy and Kelly to take a look at what had been done. It looked as though the 18 inches of leaf compost is only 12 inches. Tad put an auger down. And you know, I had to go back and look. The board did not require that. That was actually an agreement, I think, from Joe Berger and with Pete's sign-off, that would be compensatory for some stormwater that wasn't done in the rear. And so I asked Kelly to see if Joe would sign off to say 12 inches is fine, and then have Pete's agreement. The other issue is that when we did the resolution, the screening for the dumpster or the waste refuse enclosures, or the waste refuse, was supposed to be wood stockade, and it's actually composite. And I invited other colleagues to go and take a look. Those are really the only two big changes.
Correct.
They also, in addition, I should add that they relocated all of the dumpsters further north
Correct.
along the angle, and they actually have been staying there now that there's a fence, because they don't want to damage the fence.
I have
So-
to say, I didn't really think the fence was going to do anything when it was asked.
But it
and
did.
It really did.
It did.
I
So,
went back, yeah.
at any
Yeah.
rate, I spoke to Kelly earlier spoke to Kelly earlier today. She didn't have a response back from Joe. You still don't.
I don't. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I know they're working on it. We did hear back from Michelle later that they are working on it just to check that calculation.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
And we'll need to have Pete weigh in, make sure that he thinks that's okay too. But otherwise, is the board okay with going to composite? I mean, it looked really nice to me, but it's not stockade.
Okay, good.
Okay, that was easy.
It's easy. Okay, thank you very much.
That's why we had to edit
The building,
it.
I think, looks amazing. They did such a fantastic job.
Oh, one more time. I had friends from out of town in this weekend. Two are still here for a while. But at any rate, all of them, when they drove by, went, "What happened there?"
Yeah.
It really drew their eye, because they said, that used to be looking kind of tired. I'm like, no, of course it looks fabulous. Everything in Hyde Park looks fabulous. But I said, but
Yes,
it's an
yeah.
improvement.
It really does look great. They
looks
did a
wonderful.
Wonderful job. So all the pain that we went through on the architectural.
No, it
and
looks great. It looks great.
better than I thought it was. So
And the trees
thank
are
you.
still alive.
Sorry?
One is, one's
One.
not.
One died.
But it's guaranteed. I think they forgot to put water in the water alligator bag.
Yeah, the problem is that they ordered those, so we're not sure. We're waiting for Mike Augustine to let us know if he can get that species again. So we're just waiting to see what he says. They're gonna have to replace it, but
If you can't see if you can figure out
let
an
you know.
alternative, and we'll see if we need to, we'll change the resolution on that one too.
okay.
Oof.
And we're looking forward to getting the CO, and they're moving soon, so that everyone will know
Can-
we've been working well with everyone.
Yes.
Are you, if you're amending it tonight,
Not tonight. We
No.
have to wait to hear
We have
Joe's.
to wait for Joe
Mr.
to
Berger's.
confirm on the soil.
Is there something else you want to
Okay.
amend too?
oh no, I was gonna say, we could do a motion, I would spell it out for you, but if you're gonna wait, then we'll just
We
wait
have to
till
get
next
Mr.
meeting.
Berger's approval.
Yep.
That's all.
So we'll
Okay.
come back in 2 weeks, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Have a
both.
nice
Good to
day.
see you. The next item on the agenda, and Mr. Hutchins has been very patient. Nice to see you guys back there. Welcome in advance. This is just an extension of time to begin and complete construction. And in addition, Victoria has written the resolution so that this grants tolling time. That's a legal term, so that when the governor was granting some, Stephanie was asking me what his tolling meant.
Oh.
Do you want to explain,
It's like a
that one?
pause. It's like a statute of limitations. The governor paused it, so it tolls
Oh.
while, during the pause.
Like a bell tolling,
Yeah,
not like,
does it like different kind of
fee
toll?
to pass.
It freezes it.
It freezes it.
I
Yeah,
kept thinking it was like a fee to pass.
it like
so
stops.
So what this means is you get even more time.
Right.
2 more months extra, I believe it is, or a little more than 2 months.
It's some extra days.
For whom the bell
And Scott, do you want to
tolls.
add anything? We had a letter that outlined what you wanted to do and why. No one has any issues. I feel bad that you stayed here all this time just to hear a resolution.
We could hear about the other storage.
That's the way the agenda works, so.
Yeah, but
course,
you didn't have to
of
be
course.
here.
I
Sorry.
know, but it's
Okay.
nice to see all of you.
We always enjoy seeing you. It's nice to see you again in person. So I believe this resolution, any other comments or questions? Ms. Wasser is going to introduce this resolution.
Okay. Resolution to grant extension of time to commence construction. Hutchins-Statsburg Storage LLC, July 7th, 2021. Resolution number 2019-20C. Whereas. And now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby applies the tolling period of the tolling period to the project, 78 days from August 17th to November 3rd, and grants the applicant a 1-year extension of time to commence substantial construction of the project, as shown on the approved site plan, to November 3rd, 2022, to complete construction to November 3rd, 2023.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank
All
all
that
of
for
you.
that.
See, again, everybody's here to wonder what we're doing.
Right.
No, they never do. Thank you.
You like it that way.
Pause after the price
Next
of
item on the agenda is a site plan waiver for an above-ground pool at 25 Rogers Place, which is in the scenic area of statewide significance. We have the recommendation for Ms. Moss, and this isn't directly visible from the river or the two historic sites. And this is going to be introduced by Mr. Pickett.
Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, Sean Scott, 25 Rogers Place, site plan waiver, Town Code Section 108-9.4C2, Resolution 2021-29. Whereas a request for the site plan waiver has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Sean Scott for installation of an above-ground pool associated with a single-family home requiring a building permit. And whereas, therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives the site plan requirements for the proposed changes as described in the building permit received by the Building Department June 8th, 2021, and per the request to the Planning Board dated June 15th, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, sorry. Second. I almost said my name, too.
We're rusty. All
Oh,
in favor?
my goodness.
Just raise your hand.
All in favor, raise your hand. Please say aye. Thank you.
Sorry about
Any
that.
nays or abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Next one on the agenda is another site plan waiver. This one located, at 116 Roosevelt Road. And the reason why this is required is there's a little portion of the property that abuts onto the Fallkill site.
Isn't that amazing?
Just a tiny bit.
Neil, could you come up and hold this for me? Town of Hyde Park Planning Board Site Plan Waiver, Diamante, 116 Roosevelt Road, July 7th, 2021, Resolution Number 2021-35, whereas an application requesting a waiver of site plan has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Ms. Diamante on July 6, 2021, for property located at 116 Roosevelt Road, and whereas the application is to obtain approval for the installation of a 40-foot by 18-foot Trex rear deck associated with an existing single-family home in the Historic Overlay District, and whereas, now therefore be resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the file entitled Diamante regarding the specific request as submitted in the building permit application dated June 15th, 2021.
I second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is River Ridge has made a request for an extension of the time to complete construction for their townhouses. One thing I can tell you is that it's really nice to go down there and see how much activity there is. This was on pause for a long time, and now they're going gangbusters, which is really great to see. This may finally be finished out sooner than what we think. So we just need to set a public hearing because that's required for extensions of time to complete construction. So may I get a motion to set the public hearing for August 4th?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. And then the next item is, I believe that, I just read the minutes from our first Chestnut Chestnut Market and Chestnut Mobile, our initial speaking with Ms. Forrest. And I believe that what you guys want me to do is recommend, so what they did is when they applied to the ZBA, they asked for no bigger than what we last sort of agreed to. When I say sort of agreed to, it's the smaller size, not the big size they first came in on.
Right.
And reviewing the minutes, everyone seemed fine to make that recommendation to, our new Vanna White is holding it up over there. I believe you all want me to write a recommendation saying that we're in favor of the variance request, so they can get the larger letters and the larger size on both sides? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, but I think what we said was we made the letters as big as we could,
Right.
and we left the image to the ZBA.
They have asked for both.
And so I think the
letters
ZBA needs to
and
know
image.
what our recommendation
Yes,
would be.
but it's letters and image. They'd like to have the letters that were larger than what we could give them. We only could give them, I think, 14.
Right.
And they want to go to 17 and 15.
Right,
So this should be a positive recommendation, right?
correct.
Then I'll write it up and send it out and have that done. Do I need a motion to do that? I need a motion to authorize.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Chris.
Second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And now I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel issues.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
In this executive session, we're going to invite our consultants because we would need to have the advice of our consultants on some of these personnel issues. Thank you. We'll be back.
We'll be back.
While we were in executive session, as always, no decisions were made, no actions were taken. There being nothing else left for this evening, make it a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for this first time back in real life again. Councilman Krupnis, thank you as our liaison for joining us, and thank you, Tony, and our Video Ventures for recording and broadcasting.
Thank you.
See you later, if not sooner.
Sorry about that.